Musically speaking, a special one. We're talking music education were involved in the business of music education in their own way. Talking about Coleen Douglas, who she has so many different roles in the music business. Publicist, she is author, she's so many things. And she's also affiliated with one of the most important institutions for music education in Jamaica, the Edmund School of the Visual and the Performing Arts. And also with me, in fact, he's sitting where I normally am, is Dr. Josh Chamberlain. He is one who has spent considerable time studying Jamaican music. He has made a significant contribution, in my opinion, to the development of music education in Jamaica. And he is affiliated with one of the most legendary institutions as far as modern popular music is concerned. We're talking about what was formerly called Alpha Boys Home, which is now Alpha Institute. Welcome, both of you. Uh, First of all, let's look at the question of what is the importance of music education? Uh, is it critical today in terms of being able to navigate your way into modern popular culture? Let's start with that. Colleen, you want to take that, or Josh, will you?
You may have to repeat for me, Clyde. You chipped out a bit.
You didn't hear? No, no. So it's talking about the importance of music education in terms of a youngster trying to foray into the business. How important do you see that? And maybe we should define what is music education, because a lot of us might have a very narrow kind of notion about what music education is, and many might construe it as something institutional when there are people who have been able to acquire a significant body of knowledge without having to really go to any formal institution. You want to talk about that a little bit. How important do you see what we call music education?
I was going to tell you to throw it to the doctor first, but I'll give it a go. For me, music education is not
Take a
necessarily
go.
formal. I think I think we introduce children to music from a very early age for a number of reasons. We want them to remember things better. And based on my own experience growing up, we sang the ABCs. Anytime you want a child to remember something, we generally put it in a song. Um, and then for me, over the years, even with my own children, having them do any kind of music lesson, afford them some kind of discipline that I don't know if I get it anywhere else. And perhaps I could. I think I get it in sports as well. But just the discipline of sitting down, learning to play notes for me has been very useful. Formally, when we talk about music education in Jamaica, I think outside of Alpha, Edna. I think there is now a music program at Michael where ones are learning music from the perspective of going to perform, understanding music education for those who want to go and teach music. I think we do not have music formally across the board outside of these institutions, which I think is also unfortunate. It's at the tertiary level when I think perhaps it's late. So when we go in schools, if you can recall, Clyde, your primary school years, we were told, well, in my time, we played the recorder. We were all introduced to music that way. It's always on the book list, and we get that. And you have sometimes we didn't have anybody to teach it actually, but you buy the recorder and you just have it in your book bag for the entire school year. But at some stage, you get that. By the time we get to high school in Jamaica, music become a kind of co-curricular activity. So you join the school choir or you go and you perform for JCDC. And so I think at our end, at the tertiary level, we now suffer for it. We suffer for it because ones are not necessarily prepared. And I think Josh probably would agree that we have to give thanks for the church. The church has somehow done a kind of informal education with most of the students who are coming into these institutions started their music education in the church. They play by ear and then they get ready to come in and learn formally. But I do think when we look at all the research that shows that what music does, I don't know how many of us have proven it, but I think for research to conclude that music allows a child to become more critical thinker, to be more imaginative, then I think we have more reason to really justify taking music education in Jamaica a little bit more seriously. And I think it's beyond incorporating music
so you
lessons.
so you take a broader view of the value of music education. You don't see it as a way to secure professional opportunities. You see it as a way to grow the individual for them to learn other subject areas. You see it in a much expansive term than what many people would see it as being a part of an institution such as Alpha or Edna Manley or one of those. You see it as broader. So what happened at Cox's Studio is part of music education, but also you're saying how you train your children to learn the alphabet and all of that. You see that as using music to educate, and you see it as an important part of what we do as a society.
Oh, definitely.
Josh, um, you want to expand on that? You want to give your take on that?
Hello. Thank you, Clyde, and thank you, Coleen. What Coleen said was right on. Give thanks for the church. Give thanks for folks, and Clyde. Give thanks for Coxzone and the studios and the people doing doing the works. Now, I think Coxzone would have appreciated even musicians with some training, better training. We all would. So that's definitely something that you need to stay on top of is making sure that music education is available and accessible. I think what the benefit, if you would, of an institutional training is number one, it provides access to folks who don't have access. So I think that that's something that Alpha has shown is that when you provide music education to at-risk youth, amazing things can happen, and it creates this wonderful story, these wonderful careers and families and a whole economy of music that was never really expected. An institutional, I think, training has other benefits. It has a network for those of us who might be not so outgoing. The network of a school, the alumni, the partners, and things like that provides that, helps with that transition from school to work. Structure of learning is something that for some folks is hard to do. A lot of people are learning on YouTube right now, but the structure in terms of the discipline and things like that and the speed, they might be able to go faster, do more if they were in a school setting. And I think that the overall community of a school is something that is really beneficial. So a street side university, a street side college type of a situation definitely fills a gap, but it is filling a gap. And it's the gap that we should be paying attention to, I think. And as Coleen mentioned, we need to get music education into schools earlier and access to students earlier in order to have better outcomes and compete on the international level.
Josh, just to riff on what you have just said, you spoke about at-risk youth, and that seemed to have been the focus of Alpha in the past. Uh, in fact, it was at-risk boys. Has that changed at Alpha? Is the focus any different today than it was then?
It has quite a bit. There's been significant changes over time, and the boys' school, the home as we know it, the history of it, that closed in 2014. Um, the government stopped sending so many children to residential care. Some homes closed. Alpha reinvented itself as a day school. So the Alpha Vocational Training Center was born, which continued to focus on young men 16 to 22, 16 to 18 when they enter. So 16 to 21, I should say, 16 to 18 when they enter, and they're there for 2 years. Variety of trades, as always. Music is very much a focus, and the sisters are committed to that. And the Vocational Training Center, where you don't require any vocational training, there's no criteria to enter from a vocational or academic standpoint, that is still open on a very need-based basis. What Alpha has done in the last...
It's for desire. It's just...
Say that again, please.
So how do you, what's the matriculation? No, I'm just trying to find out what's the matriculation standard for entry to Alpha Institute now. What do they require?
For the trade training program, this is the trade program for young men 16 to 18 who maybe don't have the academic background, don't have a portable skill that they can survive on at the moment, and need some additional assistance, perhaps some academic training, and need more practice with literacy. Alpha is a great option for them, a great alternative. There's a very small class sizes, great vocational program where you get a combination of academic and trade training. There is no criteria on the vocational side or the academic side.
What's the enrollment like there now?
As you probably have heard, COVID really did damage to education. Class sizes are down, I think, everywhere. So Alpha is no exception. But September is coming around, and I think people are realizing that they need to upskill themselves. They need to increase their literacy, increase their employability, and one of Alpha's specialties is that transition from school to work. There's work experience included. This is part of the vocational program. You had asked about whether there are changes and whether young men are still the focus. Alpha is accepting women to the Alpha School of Music, which is a vocational level music program for anybody in the country 16 to 25. And women are accepted into the Alpha School of Music program, which is the next level of music education at Alpha.
Talking about transition, what's the nexus between Alpha and the Edna Manley School of the Visual and Performing Arts? I don't know if Coleen, you want to take that or Josh. What is feeding ground for the Edna Manley School of the Visual and Performing Arts?
Right now, Clyde, there is not a nexus. I think your feed's dragging a bit, so you perhaps want to try turning off your camera and see if we get a better feedback from you. But there isn't. I think there is a lot of room for future partnership where students who start at Alpha can matriculate into Edna. I think something important that Josh mentioned is formal education, the vocational capacity of Alpha versus what you have at Edna, which is a degree program. We have a degree program in music performance and music education. And what it means, therefore, is that you need subjects to come in. You have to matriculate into the program based on a system. And the system in this instance is to have minimum of 5 CXCs which automatically is going to leave some people out. And then, of course, we have an audition process where you qualify with your subjects. CXCs are its equivalent, so it could be GCSEs as well. You qualify with that, but you also have to go through an audition process, and then you're put into a degree program based on your level for 4 years. If you're
A
not
degree
full,
program, that's a an associate degree, a bachelor's degree. What is it?
it's a bachelor's degree. There's an associate's degree, which is a 2 year program, but there's also a bachelor degree, which is a 4 year program. And so I don't think I can speak to music without referring to Edna because it's my job. But because I saw my Edna title come up, I'd love to say that am participating in a conversation generally about music education and the value it has on society. And something Josh said that really kind of trigger how I think about music and access, which makes Alpha a great place because I grew up in rural Jamaica. And so very few of the students around me would have access to a trap set, would have access to a keyboard, unless you go to church. And then not all the churches either can afford it. So exposure, there becomes all of these issues when we think of access to music education as it relates to class, race, gender, all of the above. Because when Josh mentioned that women are now accepted into Alpha, that clearly is a forward thinking position. And so we all should have access to music because we all see how music can advance societies. It can advance a lot of people economically. We have proof of that. But also just how it shapes national identities. When Sata was playing, I mean, for me, it's distinctly Jamaican. And so a part of music for me, while we should know our music, is that it really is a marker of our national identity.
Uh, we speak about Edna providing an opportunity to secure either an associate or a bachelor's degree. And Josh, you speak about that training program, which is available to people between the ages of 16 to 18.
Well, I should clarify. It's 16 to
Coleen,
25.
when you spoke, 16 to 18,
16 to
am I
18
correct?
is the vocational program. Alpha has a
Right.
associate degree, which does have criteria to enter, like similar to Edna, but a lower threshold. So 4 CXEs, or city and guilds, through stage 3 city and guilds. So Alpha has a little bit different threshold for entry, but
Also,
that's the School of Music. So Alpha has two
okay.
music programs. One is for at-risk youth, no criteria for entry, 16 to 18 when you
So,
enter. The other one is the Alpha School of Music, which does accept women, and it's an associate degree level, which does have requirements. And what Alpha has made the transition between the vocational program and the School of Music at Alpha is something that there is a close relationship to. So there's a clear transition. But Alpha does accept students from around the country. We have JC students. We have all types of students in the School of Music associate degree program.
yeah, but what I was going to say is
Mm-hmm.
that you seem to be catering to students at a tertiary level, and there is that missing layer at the secondary and the primary level in terms of music education. Uh, it seemed to me that in that period when you had the at-risk youth at Alpha, the entry into the playing of music and all of that was much earlier than it is now. And do you think that that might be a do you think it's a positive move, or do you think that is something that's a challenge now that needs to be addressed?
If the move to the day program that's in place now, is that the move? Well,
Yeah,
I think the move the
yeah. So,
sisters made was a brilliant one actually, and I think that's something that they've been showing time and time over the last 143 years, which is they've always had their finger on the pulse of what is needed. And right now, what is needed in terms of at-risk youth is literacy training and skills training for those who drop out of school, weren't in school, or perhaps left high school the same way they went in, which can't read and can't write as well as they perhaps could, or for some reason, everybody learns at a different way, a different rate. And what the Alpha vocational training program does is it takes in those students on a needs basis and really finds out what is the need, what is the
Okay.
underlying need. On the music side of things, um, Alpha's transition to the day program is not going to affect the overall music um, skills level of the country, I don't think. But what Alpha is trying to do is trying to lift the capacity of music education at high school and primary levels. For example, because Alpha knows its success depends on getting other students around the country interested in music education and lifting the quality of the student, as Coleen alluded to. So, for example, last summer Alpha did workshops in Kingston and Montego Bay with high school music teachers to help develop their capacity to teach brass music. So the idea being that by teaching the teachers, we would reach all of their students. So Alpha got some support to bring in teachers from overseas to lead workshops for high school teachers in Montego Bay and Kingston. We've also done workshops with primary schools in Negril, where a similar level, trying to help the younger level of teachers and music and schools bring music into the classroom, as well as bring the skills required for teaching into the classroom.
Brilliant. So you're saying you are enabling the trainers, and in such an effort, you will perhaps reach a broader uh, constituency in terms of your music education project.
Correct. Alpha wants to be that hub, a resource, really for folks interested in music education, whether as a model or perhaps we can provide some guidance in terms of how to get started. I've worked with Almontown Primary School locally. Principal Nesbitt is very interested in getting something started there. Oftentimes people don't know how, and it happens in silos. So if you don't, there's not a lot of conversation across these various divides. I think what one of the things I'm hoping comes out of this conversation that we're having today, and the things that Alpha is doing and Edna, is that more people start talking to each other about music education. If you're interested in it, how do we get together? How do we work together? Because there's a lot we can do in primary schools and high schools with a little bit. Obviously, a lot is needed, but a little is needed to get started, and I think that's something that Alpha is definitely committed to.
What about the certification, for example, of tested knowledge? So you give people who might demonstrate a certain proficiency outside, but some kind of certification. Does Alpha have any provision for that?
With regard to certification of its students, in terms of graduation at the
No, not of its students. Okay, I'm talking about somebody out there who enormous skills but is not formally trained,
I mean, like a short
have
course.
a way of yes,
Okay,
a shortcut in
short
terms of
course.
certifying these people.
Not at this time. It's something I could foresee happening in the future for sure. But short courses right now are not uh, available at Alpha. I believe CPTC does offer some, like a year-long course, perhaps, in music technology and things, that type of aspect of music and entertainment. But as far as music, there are no short courses available at this time at Alpha. It's the 2-year vocational program for at-risk, well,
No,
youth and
but
associate degree.
okay.
Hmm.
Um,
But those are needed. I mean, people are interested in them, for sure. And I think you could foresee something like that happening very soon.
Colleen, Josh has spoken about the community outreach kind of program that Alpha has. You know, they're going into. schools, primary and secondary schools, to expand the music education program. What kind of similar program does Edna Manley have?
All right, Clyde. So I think I need to be clear about the direction of the conversation. I really was expecting a more general conversation about music education, even while referencing the institutions we work with. And so a lot of the discussions, the things that Josh is sharing about Alpha are programmatic. I'm not here to discuss Edna's programs in that kind of way.
Right. Okay.
I can say that Edna offers music in various ways. There is a School of Continuing Education and allied programs which offer you an opportunity to do short courses. So if you want to do any kind of music program, music, choose an instrument, even if the instrument is voice, you can do so for a period of 13 weeks at any point. So we have 3 semesters. There's the semester what you would normally call fall if you're outside of Jamaica. And then we have semester 2, the same 13 weeks. So you can break it, you can continue. And this is accessible to persons who are probably pursuing it for additional credits or simply pursuing it for leisure. So you really don't need to have any qualification outside of simply wanting to learn or seeing music as an outlet for you to expand, perhaps, to access the short courses at Edna. For the formal programs, the Associate in Arts program and the Bachelor of Fine Arts programs, whether it's in music education or music performance, you would have to access that through the regular college system where you matriculate. I think I mentioned that before. You matriculate into the program based on set criteria. In our case, the 5 subjects, the audition. Sometimes what we get are students who are very skilled at playing the instruments, but they are not necessarily ready to read notes and know basic. So when they're not prepared at that level, we offer a preliminary year. It's kind of called fundamentals in music. So it gives them an opportunity to study for 1 year and then matriculate into the 4-year degree program. So that exists. As it relates to how much, and we do a lot of partnerships. We have partnerships all across Jamaica. We have partnerships with Sham Sharp. We have partnership with church. We do Church Teachers College. So we have partnerships because we have recognized that there is a gap to be filled in primary and high schools across Jamaica, especially. So if we could get everyone to access, but what are the things that people need to really start having music in their curriculum formally? How can we collectively as a nation allow that? Because not everyone will have access to Edna or Alpha or the formal institutions in Kingston. So how do we get that in the respective schools across? So I think access is important, having the resources to allow for wider training of students. And to train more students mean we have to also train more instructors. So we have to train more teachers in music education. So I think even if we look at Jamaica's Vision 2030 objectives as a cultural super state, there is no way that Alpha and Edna wouldn't be a priority. Because if it is, we want everyone to have access. There has to be some formalized training of individuals who will now go out into schools to train. Because we rely heavily on funded programs, personal initiatives to engage some of these schools, when really all the schools should have music as a part of their curriculum. They speak a lot about, there's right now a math initiative, you might know about it, Clyde, that Mikey Bennett, Renee Rattray, and some others are working on. where they're using artists to assist with making up songs to make math more easy for students. So there are all of those ways of incorporating music in curriculum that we've proven works, yet we are not collectively partnering and making sure that we have a strategic direction for how we get access for everyone across Jamaica. I feel like I'm a little.
Coleen,
I'm here with you.
yes, you noted, yes, you noted the importance of, and you keep stressing the importance of music education to non-musicians too. Uh, because for me, I think raising the standard of music education will not only help in performance,
Mhm.
but it can help in quality of the production in that it raises the level of music appreciation right across the board, and the market will demand more from the performers and the creators. So I think that's also a very important part of music education, where if everybody knows, well, no, that's off key, or that is not quite there, then you're going to have a problem, you know.
Very true.
So let us take a let us just take a break, and we'll be right back. Musically speaking, that's the program. Today we're discussing the business of music education, and online is Coleen Douglas, and also online is Dr. Josh Chamberlain. And we're examining the importance of music education in Jamaica. Uh, and we want to look at whether we are achieving the objectives and what are the challenges facing the business of music education. And we want to look maybe at the what might be lacking now in terms of market, maybe needs, and what we're not providing, or general uh, philosophy of music education is missing or needs to be added to what we're doing right now. I don't know who wants to take that one.
I can.
Khalid, Josh?
I'll just jump in and say teachers. I'm not sure what Colleen would
Yeah,
say,
go
but
ahead, Josh.
educators. There's a lack from my point
Huh?
of view. There's a lack of educators, trained teachers to teach. Colleen, would you agree?
I, I,
That's so
I
that's
come.
that's the biggest challenge.
I feel so.
Yes, Khalid?
And I agree, Josh, that we should have trained teachers, but I also think that teachers need their instruments, they need their tools. So if it is that we're going to look at how, there are a couple of things we could look on. So yes, let's start with the teachers, teacher training in music. But when we look at our school systems realistically, Josh, how many schools are able to hire a music teacher exclusively? I think based on my observations over the years, is that a school will hire a drama and education student who comes with a little bit of both. They can sing, dance, act, and you throw that in as your extracurricular activity teacher. More often than not paying them anything extra, but they're carrying that load of doing music, dance, drama in one person. There are students who are in schools now teaching music, but those schools are funded beyond what government is able to fund, and so there it creates some kinds of disparities. So schools whose parent teachers associations are stronger are able to, whose alumni is stronger, you're able to put more into it, and so the resources are there. So yes, the resources including teachers, but also consideration for equipment where it's necessary and other teaching resources that a music teacher would require.
And I think you're exactly right. And the pay needs to be fair for teachers, and often teacher pay is already extremely low. Music training and keeping up with music is an expensive endeavor. Instrument repair and all of those things will also require support. Um, my understanding is that if you're teachers are looking for overseas work as well, and that includes music teachers. So
Mhm.
many teachers trained in Jamaica are looking overseas for work, and as they should, they deserve the best opportunities available, financially speaking, and all of that. But I think that if music education is to develop and spread into others, into high schools at the on a regular basis, teacher pay needs to be looked at for sure, in order to make teachers look at work in Jamaica as an option. But in general, that's part of the challenge is in order to get teachers, to stay in Jamaica, to work in Jamaica, and to think of music education as a career. Musicians who often look at teaching as a part of their work. Tour comes along and they travel, which can disrupt a school curriculum and a school schedule. So really having teachers that are doing teaching exclusively is something that will be important. And I know a number of schools that are looking for teachers, and looking for support, or doing the best they can, but even they can't afford what the market rates are, which is unfortunate. So support is needed for pay. Support is needed also to encourage people to look at music education as a career.
Yeah, I think I mentioned, Josh, because we do have a strong music education program at Edna, for instance, and people come in specifically to do that. I've not heard in recent time where they have a problem with being placed in institution, but it's what you just said. It hits it on the head. The budget for it. A lot of schools will call and ask they need help, and so ones have to rely on volunteers to teach music. And when you look at all the things that are required, sometimes I go over to music school for a master class and just to see what the critiques are like. And I'm thinking it does require training to teach music in this way, some formal training for you to even assess students. And so right now we could comfortably say, Clyde, that there are no formal music programs in our early childhood, primary and high
Secondary.
school level and the secondary level.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I really don't think that we're really starting where it should end.
Should
Oh,
we? You think that one possible solution are high schools for the performing arts?
yeah, but I think there's always room for specialized institutions. And what specialized institutions will suggest is that the very few will go there. I think that would definitely work for students who really want to just focus on that. My own 11-year-old tell me straight that she wants to go to the Brit school. And I said, why? She said, because in her research, she sees that a lot of singers have gone to the Brit school. But how many of us will have access to that? And even if we start a performing high school here, how many of our children will end up going there? If you look on a standard population for any of our high school, the big ones are between 1,800 to 2,200 students. So you're saying that we would then have a specialized school for just about 2,000 students, on a rotating basis. So I think a specialized school is important for those who are specially abled and who want to focus exclusively on that. But I do think what is most important is allowing every child to be introduced to some level of music education by the time they get to high school.
I would agree, and I believe that there's so much talent already in place across the country that um, a little can move the needle. I think a lot. A specialized school, I think, would may siphon off resources to those schools that, and you're just exacerbating perhaps a problem of lack of resources across, in every for the average student, which is already creating problems. So and perhaps there's a way of sharing resources. So perhaps a teacher who teaches at one school one day could teach at another school another day, another school another day, in order to maximize a music teacher in particular.
Or even now, given the kind of technological advancement that we have from a digital perspective, um, isn't it possible that you could have master classes being done remotely in 4 or 5 or 10 schools?
Maybe for the teachers themselves, but for students, distance learning, I think we saw it particularly during COVID, was not ideal, and music in particular is very hard. I can say from experience, Alpha has done it in part because of the lack of teachers. We've had to do distance learning, but it's a real challenge for the teacher. It's a challenge for the student, and music is meant to be social. Music is social, and face to face is really best. Um, and I think that in terms of one teacher,
1 second, please, Doc. Just hold that point for a minute. Musically speaking, that's the program. And we are looking at the business of music education. And online we have Coleen Douglas and Dr. Josh Chamberlain. And we were, before the break, discussing the matter of using technology to advance the distribution of the learning opportunities uh, for music. And Dr. Chamberlain seemed to be of the opinion that COVID exposed the inadequacies of our system. And maybe that recommendation about trying to get these individuals to work remotely might not be a good idea at this point. You wanna expand on that, Josh?
I think that's, I mean, that's the major point. But I think that yeah, if music is really a face-to-face activity. I should clarify, I'm not a musician. I can't sing, can't dance very well, but my experience, from being involved in with schools and trying to put these things in place and find teachers is that distance learning is not ideal. Obviously, we do it because we need to provide it, but we're always looking for face-to-face.
I, I'm laughing, Josh, because I should also declare that I'm in no way a music teacher.
That's why we're on
I'm
the
not
program
even
today. We're
I'm
not
not
out there
even a
playing
music
music.
researcher. But I wanted to make a point for both of you to consider, and we could talk about it a little bit, that if we feel that music is an instrument of socialization, where it can shape individual tastes, appreciation, ideals, attitudes, and just mental perspectives generally, then we could probably advance the conversation that every child should have access to music education, just in accordance to abilities, because some may have an affinity towards voice, while others may have a particular instrument. So if we
Uh,
were to look at music as that instrument of socialization, which we tend to fall on a lot here, when things are not going well, we call in the artist them if they come under something in music. If we think something is wrong with Jamaica, then music can make it right. So if we lean into that, then why can't we prioritize music education in schools from early?
no, and I keep hearing you stressing the social function of music as a way of extracting more resources for the exercise. And I think that's an important discussion that we need to have because, as you said, music is often a last resort when things are not going right. Then people see the significance of music, or they blame music also because there's that in many instances uh, attributing blame to recording artists, for example, for some of the ills in society, and that is one of the things we need to look at. But I want to the discussion a little bit in terms of the curriculum for
Mhm.
uh, formal training in music and whether it there's need for a significant shift in terms of how that is structured, given the present state of our music in terms of just performance. I'm stay clear from the programmatic aspect of the business here, Colleen. But just looking recently, Alpha started a course on sound system, and that I imagine is part of its music education program. And I think performance or the sound system is considered a part of the performance ecosystem as far as Alpha is concerned. Am I correct, Josh?
Yes, very much. Correct.
But Josh, as
Uh
when
huh.
we speak to curriculum, Clyde and Josh, I mean a lot of things immediate without being a music teacher, without being very aware. I can think of when you look at a music curriculum, fundamentals of music literacy, for instance. Perhaps the art of playing various instruments. You could just list where you want to do steel pan, you want to do saxophone, you want to do trumpet. And then you're looking at playing techniques. Then there are some courses in music composition. I know one of the things that we find weak with students coming in is basics of sight reading, for instance. And then I didn't even consider it until a few years ago. I met this gentleman, Jeff Menzies, who really brought me into a different level of understanding the care and maintenance of musical instruments. So that too becomes something that so for me, I'm saying all of that to say that if we are, and I can't leave out history of music, like I really think history of Jamaican music, history of music in general becomes important to any music curriculum. So but I really just wanted to draw on those little things that I know based on Edna's own curriculum and just music curricula across the world, where we can see what are the things we'd ensure that every student who is being exposed to music education, and I guess the levels would be different too, would have some access to. I don't know what your vision is or what your own experience is, Josh, but that those areas in a curriculum off the top of my head is what I've experienced.
I definitely agree. Music performance is one aspect, one way to introduce music into the curriculum, the social aspect of music, the history of music. Music is social studies. Music is history. Music is math. As you've talked
Yeah.
about, there's ways to introduce music on a basis beyond the music performance classroom in order to bring it closer into our lives. I think one example would be, perhaps in that I know about, is Montego Bay. The song that Clive that was played at the top of the hour, "Family" Protege featuring Jesse Royal, had a young trumpeter in there, O'Keel McIntyre, um, and
I'm owning him, Josh.
I can't, well, a teacher at Alpha, so we have to share him. But he is, really a bright young light in terms of music performance, and he comes from the Montego Bay side. And just from talking with him, we've all heard about Herbert Morrison and some of the great musicians
Yeah.
that come out of there, Taddy P and I think Notice is from that side as well. But Montego Bay has its own music culture. It's quite unique and quite special, and produced a lot of great musicians. And they do some things in there at the school, I believe, that are quite special. They talk. O'Keel has been telling me that they talk about music from a social perspective, and in terms of when you perform the music, you learn about the history of the music. It's very much a holistic kind of approach. They also have had a partnership with Elmhurst College in Chicago, which I'm not sure if it's exclusive to Herbert Morrison or if it's more broad across the area. But Elmhurst College would come down, would bring students through, and one of its professors, Professor Grimes, would bring teachers down, and it really encouraged and motivated and inspired, I think, music education and performance, and got people to think about it on an international basis in a different way. So in terms of in terms of a curriculum development, there's all types of ways to involve music in the curriculum. Partnerships with other schools can help you expand the curriculum when you're in ways that perhaps schools may not even realize on their own, but will take their students to places that they don't know about, they don't expect in terms of their careers and how far it can go.
Yeah,
So
So
these types
I'm
of partnerships are
Caribbean.
helpful.
Is it right? No,
Coleen, because I
thank
want.
you. I wanted to raise the point with Josh, in as much as I have my personal politics and foreigners and the importance we place on their heads in terms of educating the locals. But that's my personal politics. But I really wanted to big up CXC, the CXC mission that we have. CXC did pilot secondary school music curriculum in a couple of the Caribbean territories, including Jamaica and Trinidad. And so the CSET music for secondary music education is a real program, and it allows certain kinds of realities. So students, like you mentioned, like O'Keel, I can't remember what the trombone player's name, it's gone out of my head right now, but we get a lot of students from Herbert Morrison, and even in our recruitment strategies, we look for the schools who have strong history of good music programs, and we engage from that point of view. So I do think we have to give credit where credit is due. And CXC did have a music in schools curriculum, and so students locally and across the Caribbean are able to pursue music education as an option and as a viable career as a result.
Certainly, there's a ton of
Uh,
folks who can claim credit for helping to drive this. Many thanks to Chase, JCDC, lots of players and people pushing music education.
Yeah, I
I'm curious
deliberately
about.
stress the exam council because I think it gives it something that made it more formal. The moment they were able to sit these exams really is a signal that here is a viable career. It's not just a by the way
True,
anymore.
very
So
much
like
so.
math and English, you can choose theater arts, you can choose music, you can choose visual arts. Thought that was progressive.
Very much.
Yeah, but let me ask you, Colleen and Josh, the modes of production in music have changed significantly, and even what is deemed performance has changed.
Hmm.
Now, for example, tell me, how do you speak to an aspiring producer, for example, to tell him that, hey, you need to know about the playing of a musical instrument, the mastery of the rudiments of music. When in point, playing an instrument is not as privileged, or maybe privileged. I mean, playing an instrument is not as essential to the production of music as it was 20, 25 years ago. How do you convince? What message that value in the traditional modes of music education?
I could jump on that.
You want to jump on that?
I'll do my
Okay.
best. Alpha, I have some experience in part because we have students at the Alpha School who are very interested in technology, and Alpha has a technology resources, sound design, recording, mixing. But at Alpha, you have to have a music instrument. You cannot go through the program without an instrument, and that.
Can I take can we take a quick break, Josh? We're going to be right back, but hold that point.
Sure.
Education, education is the key. That's your selection, Josh, is it?
Right, Warrior King, yes. Big up Warrior King.
Yes, big up warrior. Yeah, so we were talking about emphases and maybe shift in focus. Because the modes of production in music and to some extent music performance in terms of the recorded side and to some extent even from the live performances, the modes have changed. And so talking about shifts in emphasis, I mean, now a youngster doesn't need to be a virtuoso in terms of playing an instrument. He needs to be a master of digital technology. How do you see the emphasis or continued emphasis on uh, the mastery of musical instruments in Josh? I think
Okay,
you
sorry,
were
it cut out for a second, but
your views when we took the break.
right. In short, if you're interested in music technology, if you're interested in sound design and production, knowing an instrument will make you a better producer. It would make you a better engineer. It'll make you a better studio technician because you've had that experience. It also opens up new doors, in terms of where you can go in the business. So, on a very basic level, in terms of performance, in terms of theory, there's even further benefits. So, if in terms of making music, understanding music theory is the building blocks of music and arranging and things like that. So, there are obviously benefits to having that added skill and added ways of making money in terms of being able to score music, arrange music for yourself and for others. So I think that the theory and the performance of music is something that benefits folks interested in music technology. Obviously, it's not something people are forced to do. It will just make you a better one, probably open up more opportunities and increase your earning potential. And this is something that music schools have experienced, I think, everywhere. One of the first music schools doing production and technology that I heard of a number of years ago was one called Dubspot in New York City, which when I visited, they didn't have theory as a part of the course, but they added it because they realized after some time that that you need the music theory in order to be an efficient, in order to be competent in music production and music technology. So I think that those things will never go away. The question of how band music and making music with instruments is going to play out over the next few years, we'll have to see. Obviously, I think someone like Coleen and myself and are very interested in making sure that continues and seeing that music become appreciated more throughout society in order to realize that kind of an outcome. But for our students today, people interested in music technology, disc jockeying, radio, and things like that, knowing how instruments and music operates will only make them better in their trade.
I love that analysis, Josh. So you're saying that learning the traditional modes of playing and performance is not superfluous. In other words, it enhances your ability to succeed in this new digital age and with
Very much.
these new modes of digital production.
How do you talk to a musician? How do producers talk to musicians? How do you, when you're setting up a stage, how does a musician like it just so? It'll people would appreciate the appreciation you get for your work. Obviously, you'll be moved, you'll move forward, you'll move up. So understanding that type of language and those types of nuances in the music business are critical to the people, connecting the cables and turning on the boards and running the mics and the monitor system and things like that. So most of the people I know a lot of the people I know in those positions are musicians or were musicians themselves.
So I missed a portion of what you were saying, but the dub spot model where you said they were into the logical training mode at first, and then they added on the traditional modes of playing instruments and all of that.
They added theory
as a means of bolstering.
They added music theory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me, music theory and all of that. Now, do you see the traditional institutions that have privileged, performance and mastery of instruments? Do you see them moving fast enough in terms of addressing some of the issues raised by this technological shift?
Some of the institutions. You mean, are schools responding to this technological shift?
Yes, are the schools responding to the imperatives, the technological imperatives, fast enough?
They probably. I mean, most schools now have PA systems and things like that, and schools probably have students running them. I think that technology offers a way into the music and entertainment field in a way that a student would be excited about as well. I've always thought that having a computer with a basic recording, audio capture and editing program would get students to stay in school in order to record audio, mix audio, produce audio, and that would, if that's something that you want to pursue, then you would consider theory and consider going, staying in school in order to do music. Whereas it's harder to attract students through traditional instruments in terms of band class. So I'm not sure. I think that technology is also, in many cases, an unknown. There's probably even fewer teachers of technology than there are of musical instruments. So I think schools are probably having a hard time embracing the technological shift, and students are probably way ahead of their peers or even their teachers in terms of that.
And teachers.
Yeah, and they're because they're online all the time. You can take courses online, some of these basic audio production courses, and so I'm pretty sure young people are taking advantage of these opportunities, whereas schools are probably not sure what to do in terms of music technology. But that's been my personal experience.
Now, this one is a bit hard to measure. In terms of gone through the training program, how do you see the matter of placement? Are they getting into jobs? Are they finding gigs? Are they getting work?
Music is a broad term, and in many cases it's far broader than just music. I think.
So I'm talking about your graduates. You've monitored, for example, from Alpha. You've monitored the progress of these people.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe how people have fared of their training at Alpha?
Alpha has been very successful, and that's part of what I think Alpha is known for, is that transition from school to work. And Alpha, I think, thankfully, looks at music as in its broadest terms. So music is radio, music is production, music is performance, music is much more than simply playing an instrument. And so Alpha students have ended up in all of those and more. Music is such a broad definition. I think there's a lot more work available than people give music and entertainment credit for. So much of it, though, is part-time work. Musician work is a part-time work. This gig economy is very real in terms of musicians and music. Finding work in a full-time basis is a bit harder. But I think that it's, there's, in terms of production work, in terms of stage setup and event production, there are ways to stay involved in the business while maintaining a commitment to developing your craft. As you had said, Clyde, Alpha, for example, used to have students from 8 to 18. They were there for 10 years. So by the time they left, they had 10 years of music education training. Nowadays, if they come in at a later age, we only Alpha, for example, may have them in school for 2 to 3 years at the vocational level, which is why the School of Music at Alpha and Edna and others are so important, because they provide that follow-on education in an intensive fashion that is really needed to become a professional musician. So that first job, yeah. I was just going to say the first job after school is really important to keep it.
I didn't realize my mic was open even.
Oh, the first job after school is really important to keep things going. So I think that being able to continue to develop your craft is something that's really important for musicians these days, because they are starting later.
Josh, there's a young man I met, but he's at Edna, but they're there, you don't meet all the students. And he's back to pursue the music education program. And I said, but I thought you graduated with a music performance degree. And he said, yes, I really wanted to build my craft. And then now I really want to go and teach. So I want to get the teacher certificate. So he's back for that specifically. So Edna's programs are accredited from the University Council of Jamaica. And so students are able to do a couple of things when they leave school. You can go and teach, and you have an accredited degree to go and teach. But you can also take your degree and go for further studies, future studies in music education or performance if you choose. I think music school perhaps is our... When you talk about a career, I agree with Josh. There's no issue of them getting jobs. What we fight with at Edna most times is keeping them in schools and finding a way to balance tours with studying. So a lot of them will just stop coming to school because they don't know that they can continue their program of study while they're on tour. So that is more the problem we have than to say that students are not finding jobs. I think if you name a Jamaican musician, there are at minimum 2 Edna graduates on the stage at all times. And we could perhaps extend that to say that some of those same students have some exposure to Alpha. So it is very relevant. I know there are some we have critics who will say that it's for the exclusive few. But like the model of the small art schools across the world, Edna is a small space. When I look at, I'm a Carmack grad, where we have 5,000 students in that school. Edna has, our capacity is really not 1,000. It's under 1,000. It's not going to. So School of Music, we can't necessarily accommodate 250 students at the same time, because with music, I think Josh alluded to it, you need instruments. Students need to have access, and though they will purchase their principal instrument. For all the other programs, we have to provide the facilities for them to be there. And I guess it's a challenge with art schools across the world too, that it usually is smaller than the average college, but it serves its purpose. So to answer your question directly, it is a ready career. I think anyone with training in music will not have an issue finding a job or finding means of employment, whether it's behind the stage, behind the board, in radio or production, or on the stage backing artist or making music generally or in a classroom, there is a job for you.
I would, if I could,
Coleen, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
if I
Josh.
could add, one thing that's come up, I think, a couple of times while we've been talking is the issue of measurement, monitoring, evaluation, but measuring what is the impact of music education. I think is something that is a little hard to put our finger on, and one of the things that music has all, in my understanding, music has been seen as perhaps not as serious of a career as, say, being a doctor, a lawyer, and those types of things. But measurement may help to, or if we could somehow measure some of the outcomes in terms of these, the transition from school to work, how many people are finding work and what work for how long, or what kind of jobs are out there, where are they going, may help us to understand the impact of music education and its impact on the society, on the economy, on tourism, on international awareness of Jamaica.
One second,
Yeah,
Josh.
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. We're going for a break. We'll be right back.
Okay.
So we were talking about issues of measurement because the subject of music education is multi-layered. And as Coleen and you two have indicated, the issue of music education is not something that is confined just to performance. It has social implications, it has economic implications, and the different spheres require measurement. And I think, first of all, people are not conversant with the different aspects or the different functions of music education. Therefore, there is a challenge to the measurement of these
Uh,
and outcomes.
But Clyde, I
Yes.
hear Josh, and I'm a marketer, so I go with a lot of data to inform strategies. So I do agree it's important to have measurement. It's important to so in our small spaces, some of us do some amount of tracking. So I can comfortably tell you which students have jobs, which students don't, because it's not they're not big numbers for me to track personally. But generally, though, Josh, there are initiatives. It is not something that we've practiced over the years, but there are now initiatives for cultural and creative industries generally for us to be more data sensitive. Clyde, you've been in a couple of meetings that I've been in where you see where efforts are made to really put that together. Jamaica Business Development through British Council did a survey of Jamaica's cultural and creative industries recently. And so we have those things. So I'm endorsing what Josh says, that we have to have formal systems to evaluate and assess so that we can then inform ones that these are viable careers, because without that, we really can't say much. But I also think, Josh, that the conversant to what you're saying is also a somewhat of a continuous misperception, and even an old conversation that the arts are not viable, the arts not have viable career. So even my own experience of recruiting students, I can't, a student who says they want to do law or medicine is an easy go. Parents are going to borrow them money wherever they
Not to interrupt you, Colleen, but do you think that this misperception might be based on the absence of data?
It's the absence of data to some extent, and it is also perceptions. It's it is that we value, there is a value that we place on certain
So you're
things.
saying that there are biases, there are inherent
There are
biases
Josh
in terms of
could tell you there are biases, and the biases are not limited to Jamaica or the Caribbean. There are biases across the world. We grow in a culture where they say if you're bright, you go and do the sciences. If you're not too bright, you go do business. If you're not as bright as those, you do business, and then arts come to the bottom. So we know that, and that has existed for centuries even. But with in more recent times, you see students going towards non-traditional careers because they've been encouraged by ones ahead of them who really fought the fight and continue to fight the fight. And I think as industries change to what are our needs, there was a time when needs were perhaps very different in the Caribbean. No, the needs are different. When we talk about technology and some of the needs that are required, a lot of it now is creative. The future we could comfortably say that the future is creative.
I couldn't agree with you more on that, Colleen, in terms of the role that the creative cultural sectors play the development of a nation such as Jamaica. And one of the things that have always bemoaned is the absence of data to significantly reflect the role of music and culture in national development, because I think always it is underrepresented
Yes.
in terms of our economic data. And, that means that it's relegated to a position of, well, it's relegated.
But
And
before
so
Josh
I
jumps
think
in, Clyde,
that is one. Yes,
I'm saying I
yes,
think
yes,
data
yes,
is
Colleen.
important, but I also am a firm believer that a lot of us who choose the arts never really choose the art because we want to make money. We chose it because we really wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And so
That's correct.
sometimes and it doesn't mean that we don't make money in that process, but it is that you must have individuals who are completely committed to this kind of cause because what kind of society
Right.
we have. So I think if we accept
Yeah.
the notion of arts.
And I want to say something here, because in the debate, most people think that when we're talking about the economic value of the cultural creative industries, that the data should be provided and the analysis should be provided by the industry itself. And I am not one who necessarily agrees with that wholeheartedly. I think if we are making economic decisions in a society, then we need to have a holistic look at what is viable and what isn't viable. And I mean, the onus is on our governors and the leaders of our society to um, to find out what are the values and what economic value inheres in something like music and the creative industry. So I think, yes, we as an industry could perhaps do more to provide information, but I think a lot of people tend to shift the blame and say, we're not getting any data, we're not getting any information from the music industry and from the creative industries, and as a result, we are not allocating the requisite resources. You have any comment on that, Josh, or
I,
or or, or Colleen?
I'm looking. I'd love to see more data. I'd love to see more information. I'd love to see, the systems in place. And I think the systems would. Um, I'm not sure the relationship, but this is making me think about an ecosystem, a music ecosystem in Jamaica, that includes education in terms of the development of the musicians. It includes the performances and a public space with which to see them. People talk about live venues, the lack of them perhaps. I think these things are oftentimes looked at independently. Um, if I may, I'm not sure this is accurate. I'd love for your feedback. If we could compare it to sports, for example, where there is an ecosystem that if you're a young man or woman, in the countryside and you are very good at it, there's a whole thing set up for it to take you from one level to the next, to champs, to college, to pros, to wherever. there's the sponsors, there's the infrastructure, there's all of that in place. I'm not sure if it's fair or not, but I sometimes do compare, and I look at music and I think about a musician in country somewhere who may not be, who doesn't have those same opportunities, and that there is not that ecosystem in place. That I think that this conversation is leading me to make this comment and to ask: is there, that perhaps the need for an ecosystem, for perhaps combining some of these issues, the issue of live performance, the live venues issue, an issue of lack of education or lack of access or need to develop it, maybe something to look at in its entirety in order to achieve that ultimate objective, which is to see the musicians and the music succeed.
And my comment is, Josh, that I don't see music existing on its own in that kind of way. And again, I know we're discussing music education, but I do think about how different arts collide somewhat and how the partnership. I do agree with you that there is a system for our sports. In as much as it might not have been something that someone got up and created, and it just kind of happened organically because you can run barefoot around the field. Whether or not you have a track shoes, you can just run. And that has been a part of our culture. So you see students at champs without shoes. I don't know in recent times if that's the case. But in as much as it looks good, there are many things that's needed in the sports that we haven't really touched yet. So the comparison is not necessarily fair, but it is relevant to consider. I think it's relevant for us to think about how do we get all of these students, and which is where we started. How do we get all of our young people to be exposed to some amount of music education? And when we say music education, we're not talking about a teacher creatively using music to teach a lesson, but to be exposed to fundamentals of music from an early age. And there is a development track, like we have a development track for track and field for these youngsters. JCDC, in as much as it does so much, really doesn't do much more. You notice there is not much focus on bands and instrument in JCDC. I do know someone has a band competition now. Raven, I can't remember the high school band competition.
Raven, Jamaica best school band.
Best school band.
Raven Amani.
Great.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
So
and Coleen, just to say something about that. I don't think that event has attracted the requisite kind of support that it should have.
No, and it's not that it's not important, and it's not that it's not good work. But
that's my point.
We have a culture here in Jamaica
with,
is that you change the face of the creator of a program, and you'd be shocked at the support it gets. So
I've been mourned. I have cried about how little attention that important project has had. I think people should be tripping over themselves to support this particular venture. And I'm very disappointed every year when I go there and I see the measly support that has been given to something that I think.
Well, I don't know. And it is a surprise.
Yeah, you were saying.
No, when I think about it from a marketer's perspective, and you hear what sponsors would say, I really can't even find a sensible justification why it's not supported. So perhaps that is one of the conversations I'd personally take on to have with the organizers of that competition. Drawing you in, Josh, because I think it is important. I think it's so important that she should be able to have regional competitions and then take it to our finals beyond that, so that more schools across Jamaica are touched by it.
Yeah, we need to see more schools involved in that.
Just very few schools. There are a few rural schools, but just the ones who actually have access to equipment.
It's a small number of schools, and every year you might have a different set of schools being involved. The next thing is that, I saw a school like primary school like St. Richard's, which
Mhm.
had done very well in the competition. They were able to start generating revenue for the band, and then you don't see that
Ah,
happening no anymore. Now, and you ask yourself, why something like that sustained? Because I mean, you imagine just giving all these little primary schools around town the ability to be able to play at weddings and graduations and these functions and make money for the kids and for the school. And you think that it is not getting the kind of support that it should be receiving. And that's sad.
oh, Clyde, there
Because
is a
that's
whole.
all, I mean, when I see the yes, yes, Colleen?
No, I was saying there's a whole other show that we could have. I know Josh and Gay get it at Alpha as well, where people really don't even want to pay students. When people, if you want to get me cross and angry, call me and tell me that you want to give these students some exposure. They give absolutely no consideration for rehearsal time. They give no consideration for performance presentation in terms of what students are wearing and the effort they have to put in all of that. When they call you to say that, oh, let them come and perform for free and give them something to eat. No consideration for transportation. So you have to really stand firm sometimes when you're in an institution like Edna and Alpha, because people are just ready to take advantage, and they're not thinking about the fact that in as much as there are musicians in training, that they also have to survive. And a part of the reason they're training is because they want to survive and they want to make money. So it's a lot of things that we need to put in place for this ecosystem that Josh refers to. How do you support that?
Josh, that's so important because Josh, we at the bridge, we support the whole issue of internship, and we believe that interns should be compensated. I mean, yeah, I mean that's part of the whole arrangement. Um, well, you're aware of that, Josh, and we could talk about the tension between the whole question of trying to earn a living and learning the business formally. I know of, I think, the first cohort at the School of Music, which included Nambo Robinson and Dean Fraser. Part of being earn a living while going to school. And, we could go on to a whole question. How do you assign credits for performance, for experience, and all of that? That would be a separate topic. But we're basically coming to the close. I mean, Josh and Colleen, if you just want to give your final thoughts on this matter.
Well, thank you.
You ready
Josh,
for us,
Colleen,
Josh?
who's going
Thank you.
Josh is the bright one. He's going first.
Thank you,
to?
Clyde. Thank you.
Bright, well, brightness is everywhere here today.
I learned from watching you both. I have so much appreciation for this opportunity. The opportunity to speak about music education for 2 hours is something that I just give Clyde many thanks. Many thanks to the Bridge and to Coleen and Edna and the folks at Alpha, and to all the musicians and teachers everywhere who make this possible. It's an ongoing conversation, a lot of work to do, but I think it's a great chance for all of us to put it in a better place than we found it.
And I would
Colleen?
like to say that I want to add my own thank you, Clyde, for this consideration, and for the listeners, especially those in the diaspora. If for a moment you think you want to contribute to the growth of music, consider giving a scholarship, giving a grant to a student who really has great talent and can't afford to study. Do you have instruments you want to donate? Visit both Alpha Edna. Contact the Bridge, and they can find the needy students who will receive it with much appreciation. Is where I leave it.
I want to thank Coleen Douglas. I want to thank Dr. Josh Chamberlain for this conversation on music education. Want to also thank producer Danelia Doyle and technical operator Kevin Williams. This has been a different kind of musically speaking. Josh is sitting in my place, but that's how it is sometimes.
Very comfortable. Very
Life's like
comfortable.
that. Thank you very much, Josh. Thank you, Coleen. Uh, it's time for the great Jack Scorpio.